where's that line of wanting to make sure that okay, so let's say a betrayed spouse comes to you and they say, I just found out yesterday my spouse cheated, has been having an affair for 10 years. I'm done. I'm getting divorced. Maybe the spouse does or doesn't want to try to get help and is saying, I can go through counseling, I can fix this. How much do you encourage somebody to go through something like counseling or like a group or something before they decide to go through divorce and not do it right when they're in their trauma? So what's that balance of, supporting them through the decision they just made, but maybe the trauma is brand new and they haven't even processed it yet?
This is something that I've learned even in my coaching, that I think maybe the trauma of going through the betrayal and my own healing has helped grow my capacity for humility on not trying to be an expert on another
Mhm.
person's experience. So I don't need to talk them into or out of anything. What I want to do and what I encourage people to do is say, okay, what how are you making this decision?
That's a good
Like,
question.
let's look at what's prompting you to make this decision. Do you feel like the emotional shock of the situation is leading you here? Or is this in alignment with your values? Because some people, and I've seen this, some partners are so clear on their values. They grew up in homes where parents had a healthy marriage, they had a healthy childhood. They really thought they were getting into a healthy relationship, and then the switch flips and they say no. For me as a person, I don't want to be in a relationship with someone that lies, that manipulates, that would disrespect me in this way. I feel like it would be totally dishonoring to myself and who I am and where I feel like God's leading me. Why would I want to try to talk somebody into going against what they value? I don't, because I'm not an expert on their experience. I don't know how God's leading them. So it's more about having a conversation of, let's be thoughtful about this. Is this an intentional decision? Let's look
Good
at,
question.
pros and cons. And the if I start hearing that I could never, or this would never, then that's usually around emotion. And I say, a lot of things are possible,
Mm.
and here are some things that I've seen. Would that matter to you? What would you need to see?
Mhm.
Or, like in my situation, this was very interesting because from the beginning, I was like, I'm out. I'm I'm done. The depth of the betrayal was so deep that I was like, I don't see how I could do this.
Mhm.
But in my prayer time, I really felt like God saying, wait,
Mhm.
wait. And in the waiting, what happened was that God was healing me. I was growing
Yeah.
stronger. He was lining some things up where the person who took us in, after the divorce, I didn't even know that person at the initial discovery. So could I have left and done things on my own? Yes. Do I think the trajectory of my life would have looked very different? Yes. So, again, not trying to talk someone in or out of what they should do, but just helping them to be thoughtful
Yeah.
about the decision. This might be the right decision. What I thought was going to happen did happen, and it didn't happen in the timing that I thought, and God was still working in the midst of that. So, it's so important to sit down with someone and talk about their values, help them identify their needs. What do they need to be safe? Do they have people that they trust that could offer wise counsel? And then, after weighing all of that, what would you decide to do? And if you think that, okay, I'm going to get out of this, it's so awful, I'm going to get out of it, and that's going to heal me, right? That's going to stop the pain. That's the wrong reason to leave, because whether you stay temporarily or permanently, whether you go, right away or down the road, either way, you're going to have to do the work to heal. You're
Mhm.
going to have to um, really get into what did this do to me? You know, what are the stories that I've started to believe about myself as a result of this? What do I want to be different? You're going to have to do the healing work. So if you think leaving is going to solve the pain, it won't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So just helping somebody to be
That's
thoughtful
really good.
about their decision is what I think is most important.
Yeah, that is so good. And especially when it comes to, because I think that a lot of people, especially in the church, for partners, they're not necessarily going to immediately go to counseling, because there still is that kind of mixed message about our need for counseling, which I'm totally a fan of counseling. But I think even just having a safe friend that you can be honest about what's going on in your situation, because I think that's the other problem is that for so many years, we put on a mask and we made it look like everything was okay. And then when your marriage falls apart and you start telling somebody that, well, we're getting a divorce, they're shocked too, because for all this time, you made it look so good and you convinced everyone that you were the perfect family and had the perfect marriage. And so I think that even just having somebody who you can talk to about that, who can give you that wise counsel, even if it's not a counselor, but just somebody to walk through those initial processes, I think is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it's not that you made I mean, I really believed I was in a happy relationship. I wasn't faking anything. Like it was what I believed. I thought things were great. But again, I didn't have an understanding. It wasn't until a friend called it out to me like,
Mm.
"Hey,
Mm.
I notice how different you are." Right? She was like, "When you're away from your husband, you're this confident, outgoing, strong, secure
Good friend.
person, but when you're with him, I see you really, kind of being small and cowering." And she was like, "You're just a different person when you're with him." And I thought, wow, I really am, but my programming, the message
Yeah.
I had been received was this is what it meant to be a wife. This is what it means to be a Christian wife. So it wasn't that I was faking, but once I got educated on here's what healthy relationships look like and the importance of being able to be yourself, that if you have to sacrifice yourself for the relationship and the ways that I had been manipulated. I mean, the stories sounded true, right? He was under a lot of stress. He was traveling. He was doing a lot for the family. On the surface, he did look like a great dad. But then when I peeled back the layers of the onion, it was like, oh, that was all a facade,
Mm.
right? And so, some people are not faking it. And so to go back and say, here's what I thought was true. I mean, literally, I was leading Bible study on the power of forgiveness and how you can heal from, because early
Mhm.
in the relationship, I was led to believe that he just had an emotional affair. So I was teaching on the power of God's restoration and forgiveness. And I really had to heal from where I felt like even God betrayed me. I was
Yeah.
like, how could
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
let me stand up and teach these messages, knowing that these things
Mhm.
weren't true? So the shame of that,
Mhm.
of feeling foolish for believing, something that wasn't real is really difficult.
Yeah, and something you said, where you're trying to help them be just intentional and not emotionally running to get a divorce, where you said you're either going to deal with that trauma now or later. Leaving is not going to be the, answer to fix that. And so that's where some women will call us and say, "Well, can I go through betrayal and beyond if I'm already divorced?" And I say yes and go back and
Mhm.
process the answers of when just kind of how it was happening when it happened. You may have to tweak a few of the answers, and we did our best to guide, and direct the women that may be separated or divorced. But if you've been divorced already, it it's not undealt with yet. And I hate to say that like, oh, your boogeyman is still there, but Mine morphed. You know, like I had my trauma from my first husband, single for this many years, which looked like eating disorder, sexual addiction, OCD. And then when I got into my marriage, I was like, okay, I have what I want. I have this Christian man, but I still had severe like hypervigilance and suppressed anger issues and trust issues and things that were dramatically eroding my marriage under the surface. And then it wasn't until his addiction came out 4 years later that I was like, okay, wait a minute. And just, we need to clear all the rubble. And I realized it is so important. You cannot just leave the situation. You have to take the time to go through that, whether that's counseling or going through a group and processing it. But
Community is essential. If it were not for my groups, because it took me a while, I went through so many bad counselors as well. So it took me a while to find a good counselor, but thankfully I found a good group right away.
right,
And
good.
those ladies I am still friends with
Mhm.
today. I mean, we called it the society that no one wanted to be a part of. It was like, got to knock on the door and look through the little glass and who's here, but the connection that we had with one another, a place to be seen and heard and safe is what kept me going. So I
Mhm.
really encourage people. I mean, I had never
I
been in a
agree.
support group ever in my life. I showed up with I was like, okay, I got my Bible and my notepad, and they were like, no, 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 we don't take notes. It was like I didn't even know how to be in a support group. But I'm so happy that I did
Yes,
do that because now I understand the power of healing in community.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes.